ending the digital divide is such a multi-headed monster, right? You have to understand that there are so many barriers to these deployments and then start attacking them one by one, like whack-a-mole.
Welcome to another Community Broadband Bits podcast. I'm Christopher Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, and I'm here with Jade Piros de Carvalho. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
You were until recently the head of the Kansas Office of Broadband Development. There's been a LinkedIn post, and rather than spoiling it and asking people to hang on, we are not going to explain what happened. We know that simply that you have let go of that position, and in your post you talked about the perils and scrutiny of the office, and we want to talk about public sector work and some of that today.
Okay, sounds good. Let's do it.
So I'm excited. You're one of the people that I feel like is more than 50 because of the states, DC, and then the territories who are responsible for enacting a historic amount of investment into broadband. And so I want to get a sense of what it was like when you found out that you were being asked to be the head of this new Kansas Office of Broadband Development.
I still think it's the best job in the country. I mean, it was really thrilling because I had worked in the industry, specifically on the rural broadband expansion side for some time. And people have been talking about the issue for many, many years, but we finally had the money to actually solve the problem. So to be put in a position was really thrilling to me and slightly terrifying because it was, a real 0 to 60 expectation. We were an office of one delivering on a $5 million state program. And, within 2 years, we ramped up to being responsible for, more than $600 million in grants across multiple different federal agencies, state programs, all with different guidelines. So it was definitely a heavy lift, but really exciting. I mean, I feel like it's real legacy building work. If you do it right, you solve, like in my instance, I would help to solve the problem for Kansans, and then that would reverberate over the next several decades and really help uplift households and communities. So it was a huge honor, honestly.
When we're talking to people that are trying to figure this out at the local level, we often say that the decisions that are being made right now will determine the kinds of networks that the children of children who are not yet born will use. Like, this is truly, these decisions are momentous.
Yeah, and I think that was what I found most exciting about this opportunity, is that it was a real bottom-up, community-driven solution type of conversation versus, some of the programs in the past, which were kind of top down and really taught us that it's not enough to throw money at this problem. You have to engage with the people you want to serve and involve them in the solution. So that was, something I really enjoyed in my other kind of, public sector life as an elected. And it was really cool to kind of merge, my worlds of like problem solving in the public sphere on the elected side, the local government side, and my broadband industry experience. And it just seemed like perfect role for me, and it was a fun ride, really was.
So what was your broadband experience when you were tapped to lead the office?
So I was with a fiber CLEC, a fiber overbuilder in a rural community of about 1,100 that basically focused on fiber to the home in areas that were kind of CenturyLink type areas that had not been invested in and didn't have any viable options other than maybe they even only had like geo satellite, if they didn't have CenturyLink. And so we really worked in these super hard to reach spaces. I was brought on kind of in the second iteration of this company when there were only about 15 people. And so I wore a lot of hats. I did all the sales and marketing efforts, public relations. As the company grew, I, grew into more of a government affairs and a policy focused role. So really learned a lot and enjoyed that quite a bit. Would probably not have left had Lieutenant Governor called and asked me to. So have really, really loved every job I've ever had. But that is where I cut my teeth in the industry and learned more about the problem. And
I think that background is so helpful for coming into an office like this, where, I feel like I've talked to other people who've had a similar backgrounds, and you know what it's like to be a small company building fiber. You have a sense, I think, of the industry positions that, although, I would disagree with like a CenturyLink or an AT&T a lot of the time, they're not wrong about everything. And so you're familiar with that. uh, you know, and so I feel like you're able to like sit in meetings and not feel intimidated, or, like you don't know what you're talking about.
yeah, and I mean, I appreciate that because I did feel a level of confidence that I think I could only come from being in the trenches and being taught how to splice fiber on my first day on the job and understanding truck rolls and permitting issues and all these OSP issues and the holistic view of what it takes to get this job done. Because this is really like ending the digital divide is such a multi-headed monster, right? You can't just throw money. Like I said, you have to understand that there are so many barriers to these deployments and then start attacking them one by one, like whack-a-mole. So it's not enough to build a sub-grant process that incentivizes participation. You also have to work with the local communities to help them understand what they might be doing to disincent. And you have to, work with the state to have better right-of-way policies. And yeah, you have to work with federal policy makers and Congress people to enact policies that are going to facilitate this. It's not just here's the money, hand it out, solve the problem. And I don't think I would have fully understood that had I not had any kind of experience in the deployment space. So feel very lucky for that and felt like it really served Kansas well in the office well.
And then you find yourself at the head of the broadband office, which, as you said, is you initially, and you're preparing to distribute a rather large sum of money. At some point, I'm assuming you have to start collecting staff. But what was it like? What were the first tasks that you had to tackle when you took over the office?
I was hired in June 2022. So a month after the BEAD NOFO was released. I knew I had to build a staff. I knew I had to I had the next month a federal grant deadline for BEAD planning or DE planning funds. And then the next month, another federal grant deadline. And then the next month, if I wanted to go after middle mile, another federal grant deadline. Mm-hmm. And, it was just kind of in a weird space for Kansas. So I had no procurement vehicle because they were changing the procurement policy. So I couldn't even get consultants. So no, not really staff, no consultants. But despite all that, my first thought on day one is I got to get CPF out the door. Because I wanted to knock out some high cost areas. We did a sliding scale model and I wanted to have that in the rear view when BEAD came. And so, started building relationships with Treasury and was lucky enough to get my program plan approved the next month and get that money out the door by the end of the year.
That's the capital project fund for people who are not living this 24/7. Yeah.
The alphabet soup is real.
Right. Those are funds that the Treasury Department distributed as part of the rescue plan, and they were the most flexible dollars. And so you developed a plan that was approved by Treasury, and then you could go and distribute them.
Exactly. Yes. So that sub-grant process was done, that summer and fall, and then just started knocking off those deadlines one at a time. Was able to hire 2 people, I think, several months later, but before the end of the year. And then finally able to get some consultancy help in January of 23. So it was just, take it one step at a time.
These are not 8-hour days with you going home and relaxing with family, right?
No. Like I've slept 3 hours a night for so many months. And that's why I'm so grateful for the staff and the team I was able to build, because that's not sustainable. And I credit them for the brief longevity I had in that office.
And I think that's just worth repeating. Now you're getting that's the work, and this is something that we talked about in the Connect This show. I've talked about it before. Those are the hours that during the season football coaches and basketball coaches sleep, right? Like for the big universities, and they are making sometimes more than $10 million, oftentimes many millions of dollars you are receiving the same salary as someone who probably is putting in 10 or 12-hour days and has a much more reasonable work-life balance. So can you just like I assume that you're just running on adrenaline and the fact that you just see that this is so important to get done.
Exactly. The alternative is to not get it done. And I didn't see that as an alternative. I took this mandate seriously and knew that it was going to have to take an extraordinary effort and putting the resources in place over time. But I didn't see a way around going that hard and that fast and working hours like that. And I think I am not unique in that perspective. I look now, even today, at states like North Dakota and led by Brian, or Alabama led by Maureen, and they have skeletal crews. They
Mhm.
have maybe 2 or 3 people, if that. And I don't know how they're doing it. Kansas has 10. Surrounding states like Colorado, Missouri, Oklahoma, I think have 20, which is a much better position. But I'm just grateful I was able to build up my team at all, because some states don't allow for the addition of FTEs, and I just don't know how it works.
Well, it's wild to me, and this came up in our most recent show with Blair Levin. He made a comment that I chose not to follow up at the time, but about how this is a dynamic of the states of a snake. Like I always think of it as like a hamster moving through a snake, but people think that's horrible. But the snake, which is like that, the offices are ramping up. They're going to spend the federal dollars. They're going to ramp down. I'm assuming that even if states are not anticipating it, there will be broadband related work to do for many years, certainly through the rest of the decade, I would expect.
I agree with you. Everyone thinks these are just going to dissolve, but there will be, for one, we know that the maps are inaccurate and are painting a picture that we won't have the truth about until after this money is spent and people are calling up and saying, where's my broadband? Right. We also know that things like, we were lucky enough to be awarded a middle mile grant. This is the first open access middle mile network Kansas has. We need some infrastructure in place long term to manage that, especially on, the just getting uptake on the network and those relationships long term. Those might be 20-year IRUs. We hadn't figured all that out, but you can't just, pull support maybe after the period of performance, the Department of Transportation or somebody else picks it up, but you can't not have a person managing that long term. And also remember that some parts of the state will not be priority broadband projects, or they won't be getting fiber. And so those parts, if you're not choosing very selective next generation wireless, and even if you are, 7 to 10 years, you may need additional investment in those spaces. And this is not a one and done program. And also what's going to happen with USF, and how does that impact the long-term operational viability of some of these networks?
Mhm.
And if companies, go bust, what does that mean for the future of broadband? So it would be nice to treat this as a technical problem instead of an adaptive one and just check mark it off. But I don't think that that's what we're going to see. It's not like we don't have water problems to this day or electricity infrastructure issues to this day, right? And those problems were quote unquote solved long ago.
Mhm. I'm curious about the mapping situation. You mentioned it. I talk about it all the time. When I was recently in Montana, I was at an event, and a person related to the state there was talking about the deep frustration that in the case of Montana, they had previously built their own maps with Lightbox. They thought those were quite accurate. They had to toss those out the window in order to deal with the federal data, which they said was much less accurate. And so, I'm just curious if you want to share anything about the experience of like, it seems like mapping has taken over the state offices in some ways, and I don't know how it went in Kansas, but I'm curious if you want to reflect on that at all.
I do think it's easy to armchair quarterback this attempt by the federal government to do a very difficult thing. I think we can all agree that the maps are a lot more accurate, and getting from like a census block level to a location level was a huge
Hmm.
undertaking. So props to them. None of it matters if we don't fix the underlying problem of just allowing for advertised speeds to be the truth, right? And so what we found from this latest version is that, we were able to identify some patterns that we found may be inaccurate in the wireless space. And, so I think I may have put on LinkedIn, lies and lies, but I also, reached out directly to the FCC and, like, let's work through this, let's have conversations. And, something isn't adding up and these designations are changing. Another thing we've really noticed with the maps and has also been pointed out by our provider community is that the non-VSLs that are still showing up, such as rocks or dilapidated shacks, that we have to account for in the final proposal. We were really happy with the solution we came up with in Kansas to account for those, but I think that we continue to see that as an issue. And so, I mean, we'll get there one day, maybe 10 years, but this money will be long gone by the time we do.
I just had a vision of the state having a application form for any rock that would like to request low Earth orbit satellite service, and then you can deal with
Yeah.
it when those
Oh
applications come in.
my gosh. Jeez.
So one of the things that, as I had said, you talked about the perils and scrutiny of the office, and this is something that really leads into what's been something that I've watched, both professionally and then in my personal life, and talking with my wife about people that she's worked with in the city of Minneapolis, the state of Minnesota, where I feel like, and actually this even goes back to, like, I interned over a summer at OSHA in Oregon, and that building had a, like, second story like outdoor seating area that the architects had put in or whatever. And my recollection, which could be wrong, but it was that nobody ate out there because they didn't want to deal with, like, the person calling in to be like, I'm not paying those people to sit outside on that nice
Yeah.
balcony and eat.
Yeah.
So when you're in public office, you open yourself up to that. And so there's two aspects of this, at least, that I want to cover. I think one is the fact that, like, you then have to deal with people that are saying all kinds of things, some of which might be accurate, some of which are certainly inaccurate, and just dealing with the criticism that comes with that. And then we'll roll into the second thing, which is, I think, what I would say, the mining of people's goodwill and energy that sometimes comes along as well. So how is it dealing with the fact that you're working for a company building a fiber network, dealing with marketing and stuff like that, and all the things that come along with it, and then suddenly you're a target for a million people who want to be critical of one thing or another thing?
It's not, I would say, the most fun aspect of the job. I had experience 10 years on council, 3 terms as mayor. So, I was in that spot, but I wasn't responsible for more than $500 million, right? So the stakes are a little bit different. And there's a lot of talk about how cutthroat the corporate world is. And, it can be, but you have a boss or maybe 2 or 3 bosses. You don't have 3 million bosses, right? Which is the population of Kansas. And so there's so much tension and anxiety around that. And I think it leads to this kind of closing down. We all want government to be as transparent as possible, but you're forced to kind of balance that transparency with guardedness. And it's just this kind of cesspool of mistrust. And I think it hinders progress. And so I try to cut through all the noise, be as authentic and transparent as possible. And I still think that's the right way to get problems solved. If you have a disagreement, you lay it on the line, you discuss it. But so many people are fearful of doing that. And so we just kind of dance around the edges and, hope nobody's going to sue each other and we get something done. Yeah, it's really rough, and it's harder on some than others. Like I said, I had a pretty thick skin that I've developed.
As a mayor, right? I always say if you, especially to be a multi-term mayor, there has to be something different about you with thick skin. Because let's just assume for a second that you're the perfect mayor, and every decision that you have made has been the right one for the betterment of the community, for people to live more fulfilled lives. You're still every day going to be confronted with someone being like, you got that wrong, and I hate you because of like this. I don't know. Am I exaggerating? It seems like you're setting yourself up for constant criticism.
Oh, absolutely. And I was like by no means a perfect mayor. I made so many mistakes, especially early on when I had no idea what I was doing. But yeah, and I mean, I was on the opposite political party of my community and got elected 3 times. And I think it was because people knew what you see is what you
Hmm.
get,
Right.
right? But yeah, I think a lot of people are unhappy and will project that on whoever they see as a person in authority, or, I'm not responsible for my unhappiness, or, you're making
Hmm.
my life awful. And, it can be ugly at times, but the difference is when you're on the local level, these are people you see every day in the grocery store. And they're not just keyboard warriors or people in another state trying to take you down. Yeah, similar. I'm glad I had that experience because I work with some people who are much younger than me, and the injustice of it all really, really bothers them. And it bothers me too, but at the end of the day, I know I'm doing my best to do what's right. And so people can say what they want. My boss used to say, the dogs bark, but the caravan rolls on. And that I tried to keep that in mind because I always found it really funny and helpful.
But then, I mean, that to the extent that you were in a good position, and you've said that you made a comment, and by the end of the day, you were forced to do an interview with me. You lost your job.
That's the good part. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I think, I've been reflecting on it a lot. But I think, although this was boiled down to one comment, the greater issue is that I'm a bit of a firebrand,
Hmm.
right? And you can't really have that in the public sector because leadership has to be able to like control the narrative and know what's going to happen, because I think I put maybe people on their tiptoes.
Hmm.
And so I get it. I get it that I don't fit the mold again of what someone in the public sector should look like or behave like. But I think it's the way forward. I think that we have to be bolder. We have to be more outspoken about what it's going to take to enact change and help impact people's lives positively. Also, like I'm appointed, right? And I don't have any I don't have any job protections, and I'm in a right to work state, even if I was not appointed. So that's kind of what you sign up for. I've had so many people reach out and they're like, oh, I don't know if I want to apply for this or that. And I'm like, don't let it, we need good people, Chris. We need
Right,
good
that's what I
people
was
in
just
the
gonna
public
say. I mean, this
sector.
is so I was just looking up her name quick because, and I've talked about her before, but Jennifer Polka wrote a great book. I think it was called Recoding America, or Recode America, something like that. She, I think, was the she was involved with digital, very many things with digital government and that sort of thing. The book was wonderful. I both listened to podcasts about it, and then I actually read the book. In it, she talks about a government employee who says, or maybe a contractor who said, if my boss or if our contract says to build a concrete boat, I build a concrete boat. If it sinks, when it sinks, because concrete boats will not float, like that's not my job. My job, and there's this caricature of a public employee as being someone who keeps their head down and just works the bureaucracy. That has not been my experience with a lot of folks. Now what has been my experience is that there's a lot of good people in government, and then when the government shuts down for a few weeks, a lot of those good people are like, I just can't take this anymore, all the problems that come with it. I'm going to go increase my salary and work in the private sector, and then they don't come back. And so over time, you have good people like yourself, but they just find themselves being driven out. And then we end up with a caricature that is what people claim everyone in government is. And we don't have to do that.
I know it's like we're causing the problem that we're
Yeah.
identifying, and it's exceedingly frustrated. I will share that I have had dozens and dozens of messages and horror stories sent to me over the last few days from people at all levels
Mhm.
of the federal government, states, people in academia, just telling me the same thing. And it's heartbreaking. I've never been let go from a job, so I didn't, I guess, get it that because these people are a lot more impressive than me. It's really been kind of reassuring, but also demoralizing because our country needs the best and the brightest working in these roles, and we have to build some level of village around this, the supporting of having the brightest in these roles, and not just crumble or panic when someone says something that, isn't scripted. It's like any relationship, you take the bad with the good. I say this all the time. I say this to my staff all the time when they get worked up. I say it to, my friends. You just have to take the bad with the good with people, as long as someone isn't saying something egregiously hurtful, or, doing something that puts the integrity of the state at stake, then like, let's work through it and have a conversation.
So, one of the other example that I wanted to touch on, which we'll just do very quickly, I think, is getting back to those early days and talking about, you're working 20, 21-hour days effectively. And what I've seen is that cities, sometimes state agencies, the federal government, certainly, there's a lot of people who they care passionately about doing this work, getting it done right. They kind of get sucked in and they keep doing more and more because the
Yeah.
system needs them to do that, whether it's because of the difficulty of finding enough people that will put in that level of work, or because of systems that aren't great. But like, it ends up often they're neglecting their families. They end up, I don't know if they would even regret it later in life, but they shouldn't have to pay that price as part of serving. And so I'm just curious, like, is there a way to avoid the situation where one had to work 20 hours a week to get this office started?
I just don't know how it could have been done any differently. I
Mhm.
mean, I think that if I would have, let's say, not gone after the middle mile grant, like that was an enormous time suck, but I made a decision early on. Any discretionary opportunity, discretionary funding in the federal government, I'm gonna work my hardest to get that into Kansas. We went after USDA technical assistance grant and got it. Probably made it harder by trying to do all the things. I guess you could do it if you wanted to be mediocre, if you wanted to miss deadlines. But no, I don't see how you could do it otherwise.
Right. And it's not like you could just hire five people that knew what they were doing. Like, everyone who knew what this industry had just been hired by other people.
I know. Or you hire an army of consultants. That's what states
Awful.
were doing.
That's the book I just started reading. It's called The Big Con. My one of my favorite economists, Mariana Mazzucato. It's all about how consulting is destroying the ability of government to actually do anything. So sorry, I jumped in to cut you off because I'm so excited about that.
No, because I think you've really hit on something so important, because you don't allow for FTEs, right? Because that would be growing government. So instead, some of these states just throw 3 to 4 times more money at out of state consultancies to do the work,
Hmm.
and annihilate the ability of the state to build capacity to maintain that work. So you're just constantly in a position to feed at a much higher rate people that may not understand the state as well as if you were just to hire some people. So what the people I hired, none of them had any broadband experience. Okay, I had one former network engineer later, who's one of my later hires, but you can hire good people and pour into them and bring them up, and they will do great work for you, and you will save millions of dollars and keep that money in the economy, in the state economy. So I wrote that down because I'm gonna look that book up.
Yeah, highly recommend it. So as we're running out of time, I am curious then, what are your fondest memories of doing this work? And I'm sure that you'll be excited to see as this project does get finished, and as Kansas figures out how to move forward, I'm sure you're still rooting for a wise expenditure and everything else. But what are the things you look back at and you're just like really glad that you were a part of there?
Well, definitely the middle mile grant, because I think that that will enable fiber in a lot of areas that would have never gotten it. And it's just a really creative new thing for our state. The hiring of each and every one of my team members and the time we had together and the fun we had a lot of fun. Like, it's a hard job, but if you surround yourself with really great people, it's a lot of fun.
Hmm.
And then, the people I met like Angie Thee Bennett. She's the director of Digital Equity Act really early on. People like her, who really just salt to the earth, really out to help you. All those relationships. I mean, it's a great gig. Like, I don't want to discourage anyone from it, but it's not easy.
I was just thinking it'd be fun to ask you to list all of the people who aren't doing a great job, and then we would just like put like beeping noises on to make it sound like you were naming names, and we were censoring it.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Like what's that? They
Oh,
do
let me
like
tell you about this person.
right, right. Because I don't know if it was Letterman or Conan. Someone used to do a segment on like that in late night where they would make it seem like the person was spilling the tea, but in reality they were
Yeah.
just having a
Yeah.
normal conversation. Jade, it's been wonderful to talk with you, and I also want to give you a chance. Is there anything else that you'd like to share or reflect on before we draw it to a close?
I appreciate you hitting me up and saying, "Hey, do you want to talk?" Because I found my calendar really open this week, so it was nice. It was nice.
I suspect your calendar is not going to remain open, so I hope you enjoy it for as long as you can.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate the work you're doing and highlighting this, and it's I guess one thing I will say is that it's really to me elevated the need to have a village of supporters and around you if you're going to do this work, because you can't do it alone, and you need to have a real commitment to collaboration and listening and learning from others, or it's going to take you down really quickly.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, and I'm sorry for the cause, but I hope that this conversation will help a lot of other folks.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, Chris.
We have transcripts for this and other podcasts available at communitynets.org/broadbandbits. Email us at podcast@muninetworks.org with your ideas for the show. Follow Chris on Twitter. His handle is @CommunityNets. Follow CommunityNets.org stories on Twitter. The handle's @MuniNetworks. Subscribe to this and other podcasts from ILSR, including Building Local Power, Local Energy Rules, and the Composting for Community podcast. You can access them anywhere you get your podcasts. You can catch the latest important research from all of our initiatives if you subscribe to our monthly newsletter at ilsr.org. While you're there, please take a moment to donate. Your support in any amount keeps us going. Thank you to Arnie Huseby for the song Warm Duck Shuffle, licensed through Creative Commons.